Hello and welcome to the fifth tutorial key points video on W200. Well, the course now looks very much exclusively at EU law, a very important area of law, and when it comes to your exam, half the exam paper, half the questions you're going to answer are going to be on the English legal system and on the taster subjects that you've looked at, and the other half is EU. It may appear daunting, but you'll actually find that as you go along it becomes much clearer and easier to follow, often than traditional English law. But we started by reviewing TME 03, and I stressed the importance of being ruthlessly logical in your approach. For criminal offences where you're doing statutory interpretation, and this is what the TMA was about, statutory interpretation for criminal law, is you need to look at what the words of the statute, you need to identify what's the wrongful act, the actus reus, what is the state of mind, is it intention, is it recklessness. In fact, in these we concentrated on intention. Recklessness is another area. I did notice some people put in recklessness giving its ordinary meaning, but in fact has a very specific meaning within criminal law. I would very much stress, don't ignore what is written in the question and advice to answer. It specifically said don't look at other cases, don't look at other offences, and some people ignored that, and of course, as it says in the question, that has to be penalised. But EU law, I spent this session highlighting some key areas, and what really you need to be able to do within the next few weeks is to be able to describe the following things. I mean by that make your notes on these topics, and if you can persuade a friend to listen to you, explain to them about these issues. If you don't want to put friendship at risk, then in a place where nobody can see you, again, speak through how you would explain these concepts. So the first area are the institutions themselves. The Commission, the European Council, that's the summit meetings of the heads of government and state. The Council of the European Union, this is what used to be known as the Council of Ministers, and is a key decision-making body along with the European Parliament. The European Parliament itself, and the Court of Justice of the European Union. So make a few notes on where they are based, what their role is, how their membership is made up. The second area was legislation. There's the primary legislation, the treaties themselves, and then the secondary legislation, which has to have a legal basis in the primary legislation. So the secondary legislation are the regulations, directives and decisions. You'll see the definition in the treaties, and that definition is very important. And then the legislative processes, the ordinary legislative procedure where the Commission makes a proposal, it's considered by the European Parliament and the Council of the European Union. Either of those two can refuse it. What happens usually is that there will be amendments and there will be discussion in conciliation committees, but make sure that you know that procedure. Thirdly, the court actions, the direct actions where an action is brought against a member state or against the institutions. So in particular Article 258, where the Commission brings an action against a member state. The other one, and this is a very important one, are the reference procedures, sometimes known as preliminary rulings, set out in Article 267. Key area And one area where I think you're almost guaranteed a question in the answer is about enforcing individuals' rights. So you'll come across direct effect, indirect effect, and state liability, so-called Frankovich principles, and I'll be making a separate video on on those topics. Then we looked at the single market, and we talked about the levels of integration. Starting with a free trade area where goods between countries traded without customs duties. Very limited because you have to deal with goods coming from outside. And if country A has high tariffs and country B has low tariffs, you'll find that goods are diverted through B, and much to B's pleasure, but A loses all its duties revenue. So very limited. Customs union where there is a single common external tariff. So wherever it comes in, the goods pay the same tariff. A common market where the factors of production, capital, labour, free movement of workers, free movement of goods, and then the next stage, the economic union, where the economies are brought together, and so we are now in that stage of. Look at the history of integration in Europe. The coal and steel community in the early 1950s, a sector-by-sector approach, then with a common market looking at the whole economy, perhaps optimistic about how quickly integration would take place. So you have the whole process being started off again with the single Europe. Really, it's the common market by another name because the initial hopes hadn't been fully achieved. And then the European Union. You'll start looking at free movement of goods. And again, I'm going to be making a short video on that. And social policy. Why social policy? And in particular, the working conditions and the equal pay and treatment for men and women. When it comes to TMAO4, this is a practical exercise using the internet. It's very important that you show a research trail. Not so much for me marking, but so that you get into the habit of recording your searches, because I can tell you from bitter experience, if you don't record the searches, then 6 months down the line you need to do the same thing and you've forgotten and you have to start doing it from scratch again. Do read the instructions carefully and sum up, explain in your own words. I don't want, unless the question specifically asks for it, the exact words that are used. I want your explanation. So that's TMAO4, and I look forward to our next tutorial video. Thank you.